Yeah, so verification is you're just seeing, okay, what's on the source, like if it's the patient weighs 175 pounds, that in the EDC it says the same thing at that visit. That's easy, okay? The review is looking for compliance with the protocol, right? Now 175 pounds is a healthy weight, but let's say there's an exclusion of a BMI criteria, okay? Let's say the patient was 400 pounds, okay? And that's an exclusion criteria. But the site, maybe they enrolled the patient, okay? If all you're doing is source data verification, you're just gonna check, okay, 400 pounds, it says here. Let me check in the EDC, okay, it's fine. Well, it's not fine, okay? Because you gotta know how this intermingles with the protocol. Okay, that's like the monitor's main. This is where they make their money, is the source data review.
If I were a CRA, I think I'd want to see the consenting process as close to perfect as possible, just because that's one of the key concerns of the FDA, consenting process. So the three biggest concerns, right, or findings, concerns, are consenting process at the site, PI oversight, and the delegation of duties. Okay, those are the three biggest findings / concerns.
That's a huge part. They have to interact with the patients, they have to be detectives, get the AEs, SAEs, look out for deviations, okay? They have the difference between a coordinator and a CRA. The coordinator has the PI to rely on. Hey, I don't know, what's this medication? Does it contraindicate? Is it okay with the protocol? The PI is going to know. As a CRA, you're by yourself. And you can't ask your line manager something if they assume you should know the answer.
The patient qualifies to participate in the study, and let's say 2 months into the study, they wind up in the hospital in a coma. Sponsor is immediately going to come back with, do you have medical records? We need to see what's going on, right?
Yes.
What additional information do you have, right? Because this is not enough. And to be fair to the site, that's all they know, right? Suppose they say they called the patient's home, mother, father, husband, wife answered, and they said, well, unfortunately, they're in the hospital in a coma. And the site asks why, we don't know. That's all, so that's all information they can report.
Given.
Right, so, and that's exactly what the SAE would be. Subject is in a hospital in a coma, that's it, right? And the form, I'm sure you've never seen the form, but the form has all kinds of details they want gathered, right? But you can only give what you know. So, sponsors immediately going to come back with, we need more details, right? And they're going to want the medical records ASAP, okay? Point is that's why this is left blank. Okay, because if something should happen to that patient while they're participating in the study, like the situation I'm describing, we need to be able to get the medical records.
When they interview you, they're going to ask you, because they're going to see that on there. They're going to ask you, maybe they'll ask you, if they're unsure, they're going to say, well, what were some common medications? What were some common assessments for that study? Alright, and if you don't do these things, because in the SAV you're not, unless you read the protocol and then you remember, these are the assessments for breast cancer, you're not going to know. And really, the most important thing in oncology is the meds, right? They have medications for before chemotherapy, during, after, and then there's adverse events constantly in oncology. So you got to know those things. And you saw the protocol, right, for this study? Did you see the inclusion-exclusion? They have what's called prohibited meds.
Yes.
And they just put the classes. They don't name every single possible medication that exists. They just give you the classes.
Of what not?
How do you know what that's going to be? You can Google it, but it's much better if you have a working knowledge of what those are.
Most things in research are not standardized. Okay, most things they're not. It can change from sponsor to sponsor or CRO to CRO how you deal with things.
Yes.
Okay, so when I say something, Understand that's not an always. Okay, I just want to make sure. But typically, the rule is that each individual page needs to have identifiers for what visit and who. Okay. If the pages are bound together, only one of those pages need that information.
Okay.
So if you have a packet of 20 pages and they're stapled together,
Okay.
then only one of those pages need to have who and what visit.
But if they're not stapled together.
If they're all single, then yes, you need it on every
Okay.
page.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Alright.
Okay, what's not written here, which is kind of the thread that holds everything together, is GCP compliance. Okay, I mean that's so basic. You're expected to know that this integrates with everything. Automatic and Alcoa-C. I know
Yeah.
Chris probably told you. Something.
I did that yesterday.
Regulatory. If you know these three things: regulatory, source, and IP, and how it integrates with the protocol adherence, as well as GCP and Alcoa, you know everything there is to be a monitor.
So a central rater is somebody who reviews whatever information they're being provided. They review it to see if it's done correctly,
Okay.
to give their analysis as well.
Alright.
Okay, so for this study there were 3 central raters. There was one for the PANS for this, there was one for the matrix, and there was a central rater in terms of cardiologists.
Now a GCP violation. Alright, those are more serious. Well, they're all serious, but GCP violation is anything that goes against good clinical practice, right? And oftentimes the protocol deviation would be a GCP violation as well. Again, for just what you need to know, it's deviations. That's what I see 90% of the time.
Okay, so CS stands for clinically significant, and NCS means not clinically significant. Okay, so clinical significance means it's pertinent to the study. Okay, means it's a problem.
Okay.
Okay, basically CS means we have a problem here.
Okay.
NCS means there's no problem here.
Follow-up letter. In the follow-up letter, all the action items from the report that the CRA does, it has to get approved by the sponsor before the site is notified of any action items. Once the sponsor approves your report, like let's pretend like you completed this, you send it to me, I'm your lead CRA, right? I review it, I say, yeah, make these changes. Okay, then you make those changes, you send it back. I say, okay, I'm good with it, I'm gonna send it to the sponsor for their final approval. That's how it works. Sponsor has to look at every IMV report. And that's another reason why the CRA better know what they're doing. Because just because the CRO hires you, because they need people, they send you out, they weren't careful, they just trust that you know what you're doing. They come back with the report, and then the sponsor sees the report and says, hey, are you sure this person is qualified to do this? Because what I'm seeing is a whole bunch of inconsistencies.
See, in your report, you want to include things that you can be held liable for, right? As a CRA, right?
Okay.
Why is your site not doing this, right? FDA audits the site. They have these major findings. Why didn't you take care of this? Why didn't you let your site know that this is not done this way or have this corrected, right? You don't want to be in that boat, right? I don't see that happening here. You can be super vigilant and still document it. You can document everything. I just probably wouldn't. Just letting you know, I probably wouldn't. But what I would advise the site is, this would be my conversation with the coordinator. Standard in the industry is each loose page should have a subject. We should be able to identify what subject and for what visit, right?
I'm gonna have you, I'm gonna email you the protocol. First you're gonna sign a CDA, confidentiality. You saw those in here too. I'm gonna have you sign a CDA. You're gonna learn the protocol as much as you can. It's actually not a difficult one for oncology. It's an easy study to learn oncology.
Okay.
Okay, so you'll sign the CDA. Okay, you will review the protocol, and then tomorrow you're going to conduct the part of the SIV. The PI won't be available, so it's not a real SIV.
Okay.
But the site director will be there, and you're going to go through the SIV report and ask them specifics about the study. The good thing for you is you don't have to train them on the protocol.
Okay.
Usually at a SIV you have to train the staff, whoever's in attendance on the protocol. You won't have to because, first of all, you're not qualified, but you're going to be getting the administrative stuff from the site. Who's the pharmacist? What's the names? What's the address? You'll see in the report, right? But eventually, you do the training too. And that's the biggest part, and that's where you got to know these things.
All these other consent forms are for sub-studies or other things, and they do not have to be completed.
Okay.
One, they don't have to be completed this day, right? The subject can change their mind and do it later, right? Like the PK sub-study, this one, the first time, I don't know for sure, you read the protocol, maybe you do, but I think the first time this is done is like week 2 after they've randomized, so they can actually consent to do this at that time, right? It just needs to be done before the moment that it's supposed to be done, right? Before that procedure is done. And then the other one is a genetics consent, and then the other one is something to do with an informant. So all of these consents have nothing to do with participating in the study.
Okay.
So this is the only one that has to be completed in order for the patient to participate, right, in the study. They can choose not to participate in any of these other things and still participate in the study. Okay?
Okay. So they can choose not to participate in the PK studies
And still participate in the study itself.
main
Because these are sub-studies, right?
Okay.
And a lot of times I've seen where these are combined, the consent form with the sub-study form, or they're separate. It can be done either way, but in this case they're separate. And the reason it's not signed is because if the patient had signed it, that means they want to participate.
Okay.
Yes, it's a deviation if the patient missed their dose and if they're not compliant with IP. So technically you can say it's a deviation, but that's really more of an example of a Gcp violation. Of if the site did not send that letter.
Yes.
So again, as a CRA, I would just ask them to put an end date here. The end date should be 6 months after the patient completes the study.
Okay.
Whatever the time frame that would be. So the study is what, 3 months long? Yeah, maybe 6 months after whatever. 3 months after this would be their end date, and then another 6 months on top of that, just in case, right? Let's give a little cushion. And then this form, let's just talk about this form for a quick second. That's California Bill of Rights. California is very well regulated. They like to make sure that everything is made available to all patients participating in research, everything that they're concerned about, the regulators. So they don't trust IRBs always to cover these 10 items, right? So they would expect an IRB to mention all 10 of these items somewhere in the consent form. But just in case an IRB does not, California has this template that they use this exact language that all subjects have to be given in the state of California prior to their participation, consenting to participate in the study.
That takes 2 years of a learning curve for indication. Maybe 1 for a simple indication, but for oncology, I'm still learning. Like this
Yeah,
stuff
they
is,
ask for about 3 to 5 years of
You see?
experience for oncology.
for oncology, yeah. For other indications, it's less. It's 2 years or less, and it's you have a better chance of becoming a CRA if you have coordinator experience at the site level.
Mhm.